When India got its independence, the question wasn't as easy as will India become a superpower? It was more, will India survive? When Nehru made his speech on the midnight hour, the world watched and the world waited.
Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full measure, but very substantially. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
Doubts were being cast about the Indian experiment with nationhood. Never before had a new nation not based its unity on a single language, religion, or common enemy. As an inclusive, plural, and non-adversarial model of nationalism, the idea of India had no precedence. When the first general election was held in 1952, they were dubbed the biggest gamble in history. Never before had universal adult franchise been tried in a poor, divided, and largely illiterate society. Now, years down the road, that fearful query of will India survive has been replaced by a much more hopeful one. Will India become a superpower?
India, a young population, an economy on the move, transforming rapidly into a modern nation. The Indian Navy, a strong pillar, shouldering the aspirations of a nation on the move. The Indian Navy, partner in this progress, protecting our maritime interests at any cost. Quick in response, decisive in action, a force of good, a force to fear. The Indian Navy has taken off, mission ready, in the sky and on the sea.
While India's military strength is unquestionable in the region with its projects in the Indian Ocean and controlling one of the world's largest border security force, we must now rewind. Think back for a moment. Back to the future, as Mearsheimer put it. For after centuries of wars and diplomacy, the international system is right back to where it was at its inception. The way is being paved back to Westphalia by rising powers such as China, India, and Brazil, who are staunch guardians of the principles of national sovereignty. So how exactly is India powerful? Well, power is not just a function of structure, but it is also a function of agency, which according to Amrita Nalikar in her article, means that it needs to be exercised to facilitate outcomes that one prefers. India has and uses this kind of power in the international arena. It has, in fact, taken the lead in creating and substantiating powerful southern coalitions that can stand firm in the end game. Even today, several other countries that occupy bigger shares of international markets do not enjoy the same voice as India does in the WTO. India is not afraid to flex its muscle and hold up the negotiation process to achieve what it wants. For example, in the WTO, an attempt was made by Brazil to persuade India and China to make concessions over a package, which seriously jeopardized the unity of the G20 coalition. The reaction of the coalition members, and particularly India, was to focus completely on Brazil and shame it into returning to the collective position. As we can clearly see, India does have a tendency to act like a great power. Even with its nuclear diplomacy, it was able to achieve outcomes so favorable to itself that it's only seen with great powers usually. But it also does have a tendency to shy away from responsibility. India used its low per capita income as an excuse to retain its developing nation status, which sort of gives it certain privileges, such as not taking up as much responsibility in the international arena, which is not really expected from a great power, but potentially from an imperial power maybe. Great powers are also not expected to only look after its coalition. They're required to take up more responsibility with the rest of the international arena. India, on the other hand, has done the exact opposite by favoring coalitions, especially if we look at its track record in Africa, where it's not only invested in the mineral and resource-rich regions of West Africa, but it has given conditionality-free aid to the least developed countries in East Africa. This is in conflict with multilateral aids or even bilateral aids that are usually given from developed countries to other least developed countries. But perhaps India is trying to set a new example and use its post-colonial roots to help emancipate those countries that find itself under systemic oppression. So while we cannot yet rule it as an imperial power, and considering its considerable willingness to act as a naysayer and become a veto player, it has a long way to go in assuming responsibility in the global arena and therefore becoming a great power.